Welcome to the Ecosystems in Action mini conference presented by the Kauffman Foundation. My name is Lauren Higgins. This entire webinar is really looking at what are some of these practices of entrepreneurial ecosystem building that we've uncovered with community over the last years, and to highlight a few of those. And so to kick us off, what is a practice? So in this webinar, to define a practice, we're really looking at what are the processes, specific approaches, and techniques being used for equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And in our first session today, it's focused on the practice of linking and leveraging assets in entrepreneurial ecosystems to address challenges and crises. It'll feature two stories, one in Mesa, Arizona, and one in Cook County, Illinois. Story one is going to feature Katie Johnson, director of Next Street Chicago, and also Shandra Richards, program manager from the Chicago Community Trust. They'll share their story that's happening with the COVID Cook County in just a moment. And then the next story is going to be shared by Jaye O'Donnell, Assistant Economic Development Director at City of Mesa, and also Jenny Poon, the co-founder of Co+Hoots. And then just a little bit more about that practice that will be shared. So in our most recent brief that this session covers is called Linking and Leveraging Assets in Entrepreneurial Ecosystems to Address Challenges and Crises. And this brief really tells a story about how organizations in two communities, like I said, Cook County, Illinois, and Mesa, Arizona, worked together to link and leverage assets across the entrepreneurial ecosystem to address effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Linking and leveraging assets across organizations in an entrepreneurial ecosystem really is a practice that can be used to help communities and businesses adapt to complex challenges and crises. And more specifically, using the asset-based community development approach, a community can identify different assets and identify existing strengths to leverage what it already possesses to take action and work together to create change. Assets can be associations, institutions, connections, staff, individual talents, place-based assets like land, building, offices, office space, cultural heritage, and public spaces, etc. These could also be skills, strengths, property, money, relationships, expertise, green spaces, time, etc. as well. And by working together to combine and connect these resources, communities can create an impact that one organization cannot make alone. So really linking and leveraging assets as a practice between and across many organizations can contribute to strengthening a community's ability to adapt, whether they're in crisis or whether we're not. So without further ado, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen and we'll transition over to Katie Johnson and Shandra Richards to share our first case about the work that they're doing in Cook County, Illinois. Thank you both very much.
Thanks so much for having us, Lauren. Really what we're hoping to get across today is a lot of what Lauren teed up in her introduction, really just the importance of partnerships and creating more efficient and effective outcomes by partnering with each other and leveraging each other's strengths in those partnerships, coordinating to help small businesses so that they can sift through and access the variety of resources that are out there and also fill in any gaps in resources that might be present, and overall enabling best practice sharing just means higher caliber resources in communities. So building that community of practice, as Lauren's shared earlier. But before I jump in, who are we? I'm Katie Johnson. I represent Next Street. I've been at Next Street for about 2.5 years. And my background is in strategy and social impact. Next Street is a mission-driven firm that mobilizes capital, customer, and capabilities to small businesses and entrepreneurs that have been systemically held back. So we do that in a number of different ways, but ultimately looking to equip our clients to help advance small businesses and create a more inclusive U.S. economy. So we're one of over 40 different partners and funders that came together for this work. And so we represent a lot of folks on the phone. Shandra is an important partner in that work as well. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks a lot, Katie. Good morning, everybody. Super excited to be here. Thank you to Kaufman and to so many stakeholders who allow for this event to come together today. Very, very important event. So my name is Shandra Richardson, and I'm a program manager with the Chicago Community Trust. Some of you may know about the foundation, but for those who do not, the trust is over 100 years old, a community-based foundation in the Chicago market, one of the largest foundations and the only community-based foundation. And I've been at the foundation for about 2 years, and my role there is to manage a portfolio around supporting entrepreneurs of color. I do manage a few other strategies, but this really falls under what we call growing household wealth and our commitment to close the racial wealth gap. So this work really does sit in the epicenter of what the foundation does in terms of bringing wealth and assets to residents throughout the Chicago market, primarily through small businesses, because we do see them generating the jobs and the impact that the neighborhoods do need to thrive. So very excited to get into the conversation today. Thanks, Katie. So one of the things that I'd like to kind of just really start out with about how did this effort come about? So we've had this really robust effort right around this partnership that we're talking about today with the county, with Next Street, and so many different stakeholders and what we call the ecosystem in the Chicago market. And really the impetus for us to get into this type of work with these partners was a report or a landscape study that was done several years ago in 2018 that was actually conducted by Next Street with a couple of other stakeholders as well, around looking at what are the basic needs of entrepreneurs of color in the Chicago market, right? And there were a set of recommendations that came out of this report, actually to be specific, 6. But one of the recommendations that really rose to the top, right, in that body was a recommended approach to add more coordination to a system that really, quite frankly, has a lot of nonprofits and stakeholders working on serving entrepreneurs of color, but there seemed to be a lack of just kind of cohesion. And it really seemed to suggest to us that the system, although there's a lot of resources, it is fragmented. So the trust, along with several other funders in the market, I'll list a few of them right now that really began to look at this more closely at the time: JP Morgan Chase, Coleman Foundation, Robert R. McCormick Foundation, and Polk Brothers really kind of came together and said, we have these assets, right? Because ecosystem building, again, as Andy has said, and as the Kaufman team has said at the top, really starts first with recognizing the assets that are there. It doesn't start with a deficient type of, perspective. So we recognize there's a wealth of assets here. There's entrepreneurs doing amazing work, throughout Chicago market, throughout Cook County and the rest of the Chicagoland. And there's a lot of nonprofits serving those entrepreneurs. But again, a little bit of a lack of cohesion and a lack of just working together to make those services easily accessible to the entrepreneurs. So we looked at that and said, what would it look like for us really to come together as funders and with our stakeholders and really learn from those stakeholders about how to link those assets together in a more coordinated effort. And one of the things that has actually turned into is a fund that the trust happens to be a backbone foundation for, and other funders have come together, called the Fund for Equitable Business Growth. And that's kind of that second little layer piece there. And it also turned into a coalition called the Chicago Inclusive Growth Coalition, which is led by, you see Axion's logo up there and you see Small Business Majority. I do need to note Axion now is known as Allies for Community Business Partners. But what this all really came down to is, these two entities or two major efforts, right? Again, to link those assets together in a coordinated fashion. The coalition actually is while it's led by those two amazing organizations, it really is a body of over 40 nonprofits, business stakeholders coming together, including entrepreneurs, to think about what are the best ways to serve entrepreneurs. So coming up with a system around metrics that makes sense for serving the entrepreneurs, actually makes sense for funders to really pay attention to track progress, and also coming, together to even think about more flexible type of capital products that would help those business owners. And then all the while, the Fund for Equitable Business Growth has actually been, a pooled investment from several funders. At the time, I just mentioned 4 foundations, but now we're actually up to 8 foundations coming together to pool investments to really make sure that there are good, efficient partnerships between business servicing organizations. I'm sure many of you on this call, are very familiar with the shorthanded term BSOs, business servicing organizations. That's how we refer to them. So we're really funding BSOs to come together, and we have been amazed at the creativity, the ingenuity that we've seen. And, before I kind of pass it on to talk about how this really materialized into a major COVID-19 recovery effort, the last thing I'll say about the Fund for Equitable Business Growth and the Chicago Inclusive Growth Coalition is that it has really allowed for us to build a strong foundation for collaboration that made it very possible for us to be highly responsive at a very critical time. So with that said, I'll take a pause here and invite you, Katie, to maybe share a little bit about the effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those existing infrastructure really helped us mobilize quickly. When COVID hit, the group got together and said, what do small businesses need right now? And what can we do to serve them? And really landed on a collaboration to help extend individual partner efforts. Some of our partners said that their service demand went up by over 50%, for example, and how could they help scale to serve that? So we created some shared resources, shared intake forms, websites, marketing, webinars, to try to serve as many businesses as possible with high quality services. And now we've seen that there's continued need for these services. And how can we help build business infrastructure and resiliency for the long term? And so moving forward, really looking to ease pathways for businesses to find sort of the right fit services, amplify the partner network with additional services, going deeper services, as well as broad in terms of geography, and using the data that we are starting to learn from this collective group to drive further innovation within the ecosystem. So some of our key plans there. And in terms of the impact and what we've actually delivered, we think about our impact in 2 different ways. One is around reaching small businesses, and we have been reaching our intended small business audience, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then 2 is in supporting those business service organizations or BSOs in terms of our partner strategies and how can we best support each other in the work. So in terms of small business audience, we've helped businesses get access to capital, both through the Cook County work as well as through federal funding. We provide one-on-one business advising to do that, as well as to serve other business needs. We provide group webinars, and we also do some different types of outreach that we've been experimenting with. As I mentioned, this is really helping us to reach our intended audience with over 10,000 folks who've been touched by the program and over 2,000 that are really getting in-depth services on a continuous basis. And over 50% of those service recipients are women, and over 60% are people of color, which is really our intended group. So I also have here and want to lift up Luz, who's one of our business owners who we've worked with in Oak Lawn, Illinois. She worked with Allies for Community Business to help obtain one of the Cook County grants, and someone who we have really looked at as a success in the program. But I'll hand it over to Shandra to also talk about the BSO partner strategies and impact.
Yeah, so I think really, if you, I'm not quite sure if people are able to see those wonderful quotes that are there, but I kind of want to enter in the conversation through that way. So, we have 2 quotes on the screen. One is from the president of the Women's Business Development Center, and the other is from, a former CFO of the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And really the spirit behind what they're saying is that this, effort has been tremendously relative and just, very responsive again to needs leads that came up really almost overnight, right? I think everyone on this call can really account for just the rapid nature of 2020 and the challenges that they brought to us. But really what I want to kind of highlight here with these partnerships is that through this effort, what we have is we have been able to really help cultivate an enabling environment, right, for some lead BSOs, business servicing organizations, to really stand in place and then invite almost like, mega partnerships to come together with other BSOs throughout, the Chicago and Cook County market, as well as what we call referral partners. So there's kind of a cascading of support that's happened in a really high, robust way with technical assistance. So as Katie was saying, we have, money that's gone out in the street to the small businesses. Immediately, we've gotten the technical assistance, the coaching, and what these particular BSOs have been able to do, like Women's Business Development Center, the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Chicago Urban League, is to be able to take all of their internal assets around, their system and curriculum, share those best practices immediately with the other business stakeholders, in the market, and immediately push that out to the entrepreneurs. So that's been an incredible force, and just we're super proud of the work that's been done there. I will also say that I think one of the things that we're also learning is that a unique element of this program is having those services not be so broad that they're not really impactful, but also be very specific, right, to the entrepreneurs that are in the market, specific to their industry, the challenges that they're facing, maybe in the food and beverage industry versus those in the contracting industry. So just want to highlight that point there. Katie, over to you if you have something else that you'd like to share on this as well.
No, just overall, I see a number of Q&A questions coming in. So I think we'll hand it back over to the Co+Hoots team to present, if I'm not mistaken, and then we can come back to those questions. So thanks. Keep them coming.
Yes, thank you both. And yeah, we can go ahead and highlight the both Jaye and Jenny, who are going to share next about their practice of linking and leveraging. That was highlighted in one of our recent briefs.
All right. Well, thanks Next Street for the handover, and I'm excited for the Q&A. I'm Jenny Poon. I'm the founder of Co+Hoots. Co+Hoots is a co-working entrepreneur center in Phoenix. We serve about 300 businesses regularly. We've been around for over a decade. We run incubation programming and all kinds of other support. And through the pandemic, we've partnered with the city of Mesa to help support small businesses through the challenges of this last year and beyond. So that's a quick overview. I'm going to pass it to Jaye for her introduction.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm Jaye O'Donnell. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of Economic Development in Mesa, Arizona. So I work for the municipality. Mesa, with a population of just over 500,000, is the 37th largest city in the country, third largest in Arizona, and then the second largest city in the Phoenix metropolitan area. The mission of our office is really to expand and enhance our economy, and we do that through a variety of lines of service, probably first and foremost being attraction, expansion, and retention of companies. We also focus on redevelopment and revitalization, workforce development, and then entrepreneurship and small business development, which has taken a new place, if you will, at our table. And it's really become at the top of our list in terms of focus and direction, honestly. Without the pandemic, I'm not sure it would have shifted as greatly, but it's been a blessing, and I've been pleased to work in this area and work with people like Jenny too. It's just been a great experience. So I'm happy to share with you today what we've done.
Awesome. All right, so I do want to preface that this program was the first time Jaye and I had ever worked together. So I think creating that foundation for anybody who's on this panel around how do we build these partnerships, I think that will all come in the Q&A. So save that time. So I want to start with, how did this come to be? And In the middle of the pandemic, our co-working space was obviously hit, but the need became even greater. We saw more and more businesses needing support, even though they physically couldn't come into our space. And I also want to say that we have been around for over 10 years, and we have been very involved in building the ecosystem in Phoenix around a lot of startup and knowledge worker entrepreneurial spaces. My background is I actually grew up in a small business. My parents started a business, and they're immigrants, and I was their translator growing up. So very familiar with the challenges of small businesses, navigating the challenges of running and growing a business. And so when the pandemic hit, we just saw all of the challenges that have been challenges for such a long time amplified. And then we saw this huge outpouring of support, but in very siloed ways. And so it was really great when Jaye and the team at the city of Mesa reached out and said, we're trying to do this support. We don't know exactly how to put it together. I would love, like Jaye, for at some point for you to share the original RFP, because it was very loosely written, which gave us a lot of room to innovate and think creatively of how we were going to support small businesses. And she basically said, the traditional approaches to small business support won't work, right? Like, we can't meet in person. We have to be conscious of that. A lot of the businesses aren't even in their physical spaces right now because they're closed. How do we track and measure this? This has been a constant challenge. And she really took this time to think about, how does this one-time infusion of funding allow us to build something that could be scaled beyond a pandemic? And how do we build resilient communities beyond this one-time challenge? So another challenge was how to help the most hard to reach communities, knowing that the city of Mesa is very diverse. We needed to make sure we thought about that. And how do we help at scale, knowing that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of small businesses that need the help right now, and there's only 10 economic developers, 2 economic developers that could really be focused on this at one time. There's never going to be enough economic developers to truly help all of the businesses that need help at that time. And so our solution, as we started to work through this, was, how do we lean into technology to scale, to help with a lot of the administrative costs and time that it takes to do the support, and to allow for the team to spend more of the vital time in actually doing direct service and helping small businesses. How do we build a wide partner network? We know there's a ton of resources in our community. We, in our co-working and in the entrepreneurial space, Entrepreneurial Center, we talk about, you don't have to be an expert in everything. You just need to know what you're really, really good at and lean on everybody else. There's more than enough resources out there. So how do we build that network to lean on others? Aggregate, automate, bring it all together to support small businesses and meet them where they are. So not build a static system, because that's been there all along. You know, like, we've been sitting here, all these partners have been doing work and waiting for small businesses to come to them, and it's not always been effective. So how do we build something that isn't static, that moves to them, and leverage partnerships? So how do we, going back to that, how do we help partners identify what their strengths are, and how do we leverage that? So in short, we needed a way to coordinate assistance, visibility into what entrepreneurial support resources exist across the ecosystem, and an effective way to reach and support entrepreneurs 24/7, knowing, you know, we can't all be working 24 hours a day, but are there ways that we could set up systems to allow for that support? And so we've always, under co-working entrepreneur model, had talked about hub and spoke model. And this is the name of the platform that we've built, is the hub. And so this model is really, how do we bring all of the great expertise around our community together and get them working together in support of entrepreneurs? So in this program with the city of Mesa, there was the city of Mesa kind of leading, and I call them like Switzerland, and everybody loves to work with them. And we remove a lot of the barriers if there's one central partner organization at the center. And then support organizations, which are nonprofits, affinity groups, which are chambers, business experts, knowing also that the knowledge worker space and servicers, small business servicers, not exactly Main Street businesses, also were hit in this period, but are the complementary services of complementary support systems to small businesses. So the example I give is like a web developer and a small business are great hand in hand because they help each other. And then the entrepreneurs that we're truly serving. So connecting these pieces together and working together forward is the big framework, right, that we need to build. And we put it all together in a platform that can move beyond this one-time moment, right? And so as we dug into it, and also thinking about my parents and navigating PPP and all the different things that were available at that time, we really looked at what is it, what does this look like, and how do we aggregate all these resources? So we brought together new grants. This meant like there's a grant library and we're sourcing grants across the nation, as well as things that are available locally, and prioritizing them for the small businesses that need whatever specific grant that applies to them. A digital learning library. This was something that the city of Mesa was very prioritized. The idea that while we can't do direct service to almost every single business, we can provide ways for businesses to learn to improve their business. In our entrepreneurial work as well, we know that a lot of businesses gain support in 3 different ways. One is do it yourself. If I watch a webinar, I can probably go through and complete whatever it is I need to complete. This like Facebook ads. If I watch a Facebook ads webinar, I can probably figure out how to set up a pixel. What I can't do is figure out how to build my own website. I will never learn how to be a developer. So there are moments where we need to hire people to get help. There are moments we can do it ourselves. And then there are moments where we need actually just advisement. We need to talk to somebody to help us get over some of those bigger challenges. And so we have peer-to-peer support, technical assistance management, that's the one-on-one support. We gathered all the events that happen in a community and made it super easy for all of our partners to add those events in one place. We added in live chat. So at any point at 9 p.m. at night, we see a lot businesses come on and they're like, how do I apply for this loan, or what's available for me? They can get responses right away, a business directory for them to find other people, multi-language support, and then resource mapping to understand what other partners exist in the community, and for partners to help other partners. So a lot of times businesses will come to the SBA and they don't necessarily do tactical support. That might be a referral to another organization that would do true like tactical web development, right? But we want to be able to track that, and we want each of those partner organizations to understand what everybody else does, that strength measurement piece. So that's overview of the platform. And then what does the outcomes look like with this specific instance? So Mesa was the first to really pilot this with us and build it. We sat, side by side, and every week sat with Jaye and Kelly at Mesa and said, what else, what are the challenges that you're seeing? What are the challenges that we're seeing? What are the partners saying? How can we implement some of these solutions so that they're long-term? So here's a quick overview of how we put it together. So Mesa has a population of about 500,000. The city of Mesa brought together 12 local nonprofits to deliver about 1.5 million in technical assistance to 250 businesses over, I think that was about a 6-month timeframe. We brought together 50 plus advisors. 50 were just from Co+Hoots, but I know that there's much more across other partners. So getting all of those advisors, and I say advisors, they're really consultants who are doing tactical work. So it's not business coaching, it's actually, we're gonna build your website. We're gonna set up your social media and get you going and trained on how to run that. Delivered about 3,300 of hours of one-on-one assistance, produced 70 webinars, so that's that learning library, with 20 of them being in Spanish and all of them translated with subtitles. And then the big piece to this is because it's all in one system and all partners are working within one system, we're getting a lot of real-time data feedback that's informing us moving forward with the next month and the next month. So we saw at the end of last year, a lot of businesses requesting financial support. I need to talk to a CPA to get help with applying for these different programs. Now, as we move into this year, we're seeing a lot around marketing and support around marketing and web development. The last two pieces I wanted to call out again, that this is an active platform. So there's a space, the businesses come on, they can search for what they need, but there's also a lot of notifications as new grants get updated. They get an SMS notification as city host updates things. As the city says, there's this new program available, everybody gets notified of it and can jump back on and start applying for different things that are available. There's also knowing that a lot of businesses operate on their mobile app or on their mobile device. There's a mobile app, and we do a lot of SMS notifications to get businesses engaged. So high level impact, we saw within the first month that 72% of the businesses on the platform saw positive business growth. We measured that in four ways. So lowered expenses, improved revenues, created a job, and qualified for a loan or grant. And we also saw businesses engage the platform 3 to 4 times a week, and most of the population, women and people of color, over 50%. A couple other unique things that we measured that I thought was really interesting to call out is we know that small businesses have often don't know that the municipality or the cities or these resources exist at that level or in their community. And so we measured trust. So one of our questions is, do you feel like that you can ask the city for help? And at the beginning of this program, most businesses were like, no, I honestly don't know what a city can do for me. By the end of the program, 90%, they were seeing Kelly, who's running a lot of the communication. All of this support and response was coming from the city in partnership with other partners, but they felt a lot more confident coming to a city for help. We also measured general sentiment score. So I think like many of you, if you were involved in the early stages of the pandemic and entrepreneur support, I think a lot of cities went out and just did phone calls to businesses because they couldn't prioritize which businesses were highest impacted. And so they called everybody and they delivered services to everybody, but really there were a lot of businesses that needed a lot of help. And then there were a lot of businesses that benefited from the pandemic and really shouldn't be needing a ton of support. And so our general sentiment score really brought forward the businesses that were most impacted. The question was, how are you feeling about your business today? A score of 1 is I'm about to close. A score of 7 or a score of 10 is this pandemic is the best thing that could have happened to me. And that gave us a running list of which businesses to do direct outreach to. So this is pretty much my last slide, but the highlights are there's now 400 plus businesses on the platform. 40% of the businesses operate primarily on a mobile device. And in the last year, we've produced 1,200 hours of technical assistance. So I want to end with, a link to the practice brief that Lauren did an amazing job of documenting all of this work. So there's a link to that, as well as if you want to download the case study that we have with the City of Mesa, you can do that at our website. So at the Join Hub platform website. And then I want to just do one quick call out to Nick, who's one of the businesses on this platform. A lot of times we think that businesses just need cash infusion, and that is true. But there's a lot of value in direct support beyond just cash infusion. And so Nick here, after the support that was given to him, he said, give me the option of cash grant or the support of Mesa Cares, the technical assistance program, and I'll take the Cares Hub advisor support every time. The support is worth more than any cash grant. And that was because a lot of businesses, if they were given money, they might not know which expert or what to spend it on. And having that already curated for them and brought together with the best resources and their best assets is a game changer for so many. So that's it. That's an overview of Hub and Co+Hoots and the City of Mesa.
Thank you very much, Jaye and Jenny. We're going to now be joined also by Katie and Shandra to open up the Q&A. And actually, I am going to kick us off. There's quite a few questions from participants, so we'll definitely get into those. I'll share some of those more pointed questions to you, but I'm going to kick it off with a general question. So as everyone knows and who's listening, it's probably clear now that these were the 2 case stories that were shared in the Linking and Leveraging Assets brief that was published. And so I'm going to kick it off. There's some really technical questions also in the chat that we'll get to, but I want to share sort of an overarching question around linking and leveraging assets. Both of these stories were unique in how you worked with a wide variety of different community partners that brought together different assets to actually make these programs come alive. And that is a superpower in and of itself. So we want to know a little bit more about that. So I'd like to hear what assets, short and long term, were strengthened in your community due to your approach. So what was strengthened? What kind of assets do you think were strengthened because you took this approach?
Who do you want to start, Lauren?
Yeah, so if you feel like jumping in, go ahead, Jaye. Thank you.
Okay. Partnerships really were strengthened. Actually, some were created. Jenny mentioned that we had not worked together before, but I knew Co+Hoots. I knew Jenny. She had a fantastic reputation. But I think the partnerships between government, nonprofits, academia, and also the private sector were strengthened immensely, because having this crisis hit us, hit our small businesses so hard, it really helped the walls come down and minds open up for how we can quickly rally around this community that needs our help. And so we had a single vision, which was to first save businesses, if at all possible, and then to build resiliency and increase their competitiveness and really give them a foundation through training and education so that they could not just survive over the next few months or years, but really thrive in this environment. And even now, looking at the partnerships that were created, I still think we're working more together than we ever had before. And we're continuing the technical assistance program. Our council was really excited about the results that we achieved, not just with the Co+Hoots Hub platform, but with all of our partners together. So they allocated some additional funding through the general fund for technical assistance support. And now we have contractual relationships with several partners to continue and sustain this support.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear from either Katie or Shandra about the same question as well. What assets do you feel like were strengthened through your effort?
I can go first. I think I can talk about some of the tangible assets, and then I know Shandra, I think, can probably piggyback on some of the things that Jaye said, just about some of the more intangible relationship aspects of the work, because I think they're both really important factors here. So I think just tangibly, the volume of coaching resources for small businesses really grew, just being able to get small businesses the resources they need. Also, frankly, short and long-term investments in the ecosystem, especially by the Cook County government. And so really this program has helped them think about what is their long-term small business agenda, and how are they going to support small businesses long-term. And then finally, I think some data, like ecosystem-wide data to fuel innovation, is something that we're just beginning to tap into. So I think that's something really exciting. But I think Shandra already kind of started in her presentation talking about some of the intangible assets too, which are more important in many cases.
If it's okay, Lauren, I'll just add just a few notes and then quickly hand it over, because these are some amazing questions I see here. But I would highlight that I think that one major asset that has been strengthened has been around knowledge sharing. And I want to specifically highlight what I like to call cultural competency of serving entrepreneurs of color, right, has been shared across the organization. What I mean by that is in Chicago, we have a wealth of entrepreneurs that are in the Latinx community as well as the African American community. Some of the BSOs that we're talking about in this particular program really have understood what those cultural nuances are to serve those entrepreneurs entrepreneurs and Latinx-based communities, right? And through these partnerships, they've been able to share that knowledge with other BSOs. And now you're talking about a more, not just coordinated marketplace of services for the entrepreneurs, but a more tailored and just relevant, place that entrepreneurs can go anywhere. They can go on the South Side now and find that same type of cultural competency there because the BSOs are now linking those assets together. So really want to highlight that right now.
So let's take a couple of other questions here. We're going to answer some of them in the Q&A and some of them live. So the first question here is by Jeff Bennett. He says, curious what kind of legal entity, if any, the coalition of organizations is. Is there an umbrella nonprofit that the partner organizations are somehow a part of, or is it just something like an MOA? I think actually it'd be nice for both groups to talk about, how this is organized. So maybe somebody first from Cook County Initiative, back to either Katie or Shandra, and then we'll go to you, Jaye and Jenny.
I'll quickly answer that. Great question, Jeff. I will tell you that the Chicago Inclusive Growth Coalition, which I think he was responding to, is not a legal entity and does not have a formalized structure. So it really is more like a MOA, Memorandum of Understanding. However, there are two lead BSOs, again, Allies for Community Partners and Small Business Majority, who the foundations actually that are involved in this effort, we support them and give them the resources that they can then have the capacity to lead. So that's the quickest way to answer that.
And then for the program structure for the, is that sort of more, is that the same for the program structure for the Cook County Initiative?
In terms of the program structure, yeah, I mean, overall, Next Street serves as the program coordinator, helping to sort of coordinate a lot of the different partners. I do think it's helpful to have sort of a central coordinating body, just to actually, coordination, as we all know, takes a lot of work. And so just making sure that there are a few people, and Shandra plays a really important coordination role too with all of the Fund for Equitable Business Growth and all of the funders that come along there. So in general, I would say a similar structure in terms of sort of memorandums of understanding, but making sure that there's someone sort of in charge of getting folks on the same page and working together is helpful in terms of moving things forward.
Very helpful. And maybe the same question back over to you, Jaye or Jenny, just to give a kind of a sense about how this is structured. I think that's helpful for these folks who are also thinking of leading similar initiatives or organizing similar collective or collaborative projects.
Happy to answer that. The city of Mesa really, I think, took the lead in coordinating all of the entities, and we did an RFP for services, and it was an RFP that was pretty broad, wide, and allowed the service providers to come to the table and really offer the best that they wanted to offer, because they obviously all had different core competencies. And so in the RFP and just chatting with those we knew who were going to submit, we made it clear that we didn't understand what the volume would be initially. So we had to provide some duplicative services, and they were all very comfortable for that. But we used the RFP as a way to really fine tune what services we needed, but then also they could provide other recommendations from what they were hearing from their stakeholder community. And I think that worked out well. So we wound up formally contracting with these different nonprofits. And we also made it clear that we wanted to help them because the nonprofits were also suffering. So if we could help them, perform some additional services for the public community or the private community, that made sense as well. And then we also had contracts with the companies or the entrepreneurs or small businesses who were applying for technical assistance. The contract was, you're agreeing to accept these technical assistance services and hours of one-on-one time, and making sure that they understood there was a commitment. If they were getting 20 hours of website development, they needed to plug in and engage and start utilizing those hours within a certain period of time.
Thank you very much. I think that that's a good start to getting a sense to that. Jeff, feel free to follow up if you have any other question around that. We can dig deeper. I'm going to go to another question here. I'm going to jump to a question by Annika Horn, and I'm going to merge it with another curiosity I had that I think might help us dig deeper into how you worked with partners and their assets. So Annika says, how did you get so many stakeholders involved? And what were some of the biggest concerns at the outset? How did you overcome them? And I would add, how did you get so many stakeholders involved, and how did you get them to trust enough to share their assets, to share so much to bring together, right? So how did you get so many people involved? What were some barriers to that? And how did you build that trust? I think that that's a core thing that we explore in the brief, and I'd love to hear some of your live response around that. Maybe we'll go back over to, well, Jaye, if you want to jump in again, happy to go there. Yeah, go ahead.
Money is sadly always a bit of a motivator. And many of the nonprofits that we worked with knew that the city had funds to allocate. And so I think that it made it easier for them to come to the table to know that they could get some of this funding to help support them through this difficult time. And they also, because they serve small businesses, wanted to continue to deliver services to the small businesses because they're their constituents. So it was, both altruistic and somewhat capitalistic, but I think that it motivated everybody to come together and at least listen and hear the vision that the city had, which was we were very transparent in saying that, we dabble in small business development. This is not our wheelhouse. We need your help. We can't do this alone. You obviously can't do it alone either because they're losing funding. I mean, it was chaos. And so I think the approach that we took was, let's build this thing together and find a way to utilize everybody's strengths. And also, we targeted the Asian Chamber of Commerce, Black Chamber of Commerce, East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to reach those underserved populations that we certainly didn't have a strong relationship with and admittedly needed to bring into the fold. So I think that was helpful to just be humble and admit we don't necessarily know exactly what to do. So help us find this way and build this program.
And there's value in that, right? That's worth paying for. I think a lot of times nonprofits get asked to extend their network and do more work, assuming that they would do it out of the kindness of their heart, but they still have to operate, right? Like our time is money. And so I think right on with Jaye that if we can start thinking that way, like if you didn't connect with those partners, the city of Mesa would need to go out and do that work, and that would cost employee time hours, marketing hours. And so it's much cheaper to just work with partners who already have those communities and have them do what they do best, market to that community.
And over to you, Shandra and Katie, any thoughts about how did you get so many stakeholders to be involved and trustingly share their assets to make this happen?
Yeah, first, let me just, I'm on mute, so you don't hear me saying that's good, that's right. Mm-hmm. I love those points that were made by both Jaye and Jenny, absolutely spot on. And some of our experience is actually pretty consistent with that. So money is a powerful tool and force, right? But I would say I cannot emphasize this enough. In this particular effort around the recovery effort that Katie and I are sharing about today, really, we had a strong foundation with these partners were already working together literally for about, I think, a year or so in this coalition. And again, the impetus for them coming together, over 40 organizations, to work in these working groups around standard ways to serve entrepreneurs, creating a flexible capital product for entrepreneurs, really was a response to a landscape study. So, I hate to keep going back to it, but it is truly true that this study was just that powerful, that it really really put on just on the front screen how big and complex these issues are. And it made it very clear that we have to do some collective impact work together. And so we had those ingredients already in the market that really forced us and those organizations to work together. So then you have this big effort that comes, and it was really natural for them to come together. So it was not pulling teeth. And then you do have the currency of money. The one other thing I will say too is, I'm trying to be very broad today because this is an audience of broad stakeholders across the board. But if I were speaking to my colleagues at other foundations and other funders, there's also another ecosystem that's being developed behind the scenes. It's an ecosystem of givers, of philanthropists that are coming together. And we're now starting to merge our strategies. It's no longer just about the trust is doing this over here and JP Morgan Chase is doing that over there. And so that's another story to be told. And we have also been learning from the organizations and modeling that two-way.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that. I love all of those things. And I think one of my colleagues here at Next Street, Sharice Conan Johnson, who was, I think, really instrumental in some of the early work of our program, really had this mantra of we're stronger together. And so really, I think what does stronger together mean? It means that our collective impact on mission and serving small businesses is better. We have more of the funds, which means more capacity, more people to serve small businesses. And it means that we have a real leadership and a voice. I think a voice to advocate for small businesses together, which is louder when we all are working together, and also giving individual leadership to organizations and really showcasing the powerful work that they do every day. And I think that we're always talking about collaboration and coordination. And I think one of the really powerful parts about this work is getting people to collaborate around actual work. I think sometimes collaboration means being in meetings together. And I think doing work and forming this program with each other, as well as some of the work that Shandra referenced around CIGC and the research, like getting people to collaborate and say, this is our shared viewpoint on this, and this is how we want to move forward, I think are the most powerful ways to enact collaboration and trust. And we had partners saying, this really changed the way we thought about our own strategy because we saw what, partner X's strengths were. And so I think that really having sort of collaboration around work also helped kind of drive that trust.
So I'm going to transition us now to this question by Andrew Button, which I think is really interesting, at least from an asset-based frame, like thinking about, first of all, recognizing and finding assets is a huge part of, what assets are visible or invisible in an ecosystem, why we can see or can't see things. There's a whole, I think, deeper conversation there that Andrew's comment brings up. So I'm just going to read it, and then I invite us to kind of go deeper into this question. He says, through our work, we're learning about a massive pool of untapped entrepreneurial and innovative talent that is sitting on the sidelines in many neighborhoods and communities that isn't plugging into existing ecosystem supports that are available. But many feel unapproachable to them, or many of these supports feel unapproachable to them, primarily because they don't refer to themselves as entrepreneurs and they don't believe they're working on a business. They just have an idea. Are there, and I might rephrase this a little bit, but he says, are there any other BSOs or ESOs that you would say are doing a great job of activating that untapped talent that isn't plugging in, getting them off the sidelines and in the game? So actually, I know that both of your programs did this in different ways. And I'd love for you just to talk about how you see specific strategies or what it takes to connect with these folks that are on the sidelines and help them recognize the assets that they have to offer and that also your programs have to offer. So maybe let's jump into Andrew's question. Anybody feel called to talk about bringing people in off the sidelines?
Well, I think on this, one of the crazy things, so many crazy things about the last year and a half, but so many of our programs have been focused on ensuring business survival for those businesses that have been in action. But it's also, as we all know, has been one of the richest startup environments, that there are just record numbers of startups starting every day. And so I think that, figuring out how to serve those two very different needs at the same time is a real challenge right now. And even the tone of how you talk to those different entrepreneur communities and the like is challenging. I think having different organizations in your network that can speak to those different populations. I think to Chandra's point, really almost around, there's the cultural competency, but there's also, there's cultures around some of these different stages and types of entrepreneurs. And so I think that's been our real strategy, is making sure that we have sort of a continuum of resources to sort of serve that whole landscape.
I would echo what Katie said in terms of the different audiences, and someone who has an idea is very different from someone who has already started the business. I mean, it's almost like, just leaps and bounds ahead, even though it might only be from, early stage to phase 1 or phase 2. And we struggle with that, I think, and have as a city on how to really pull all of our resources together to make sure that those folks could actually access the information at the time in which they need it. And so we've put together mesabusinessbuilder.com. It's a website where we've packaged, I think, literally all of the resources that entrepreneurs need. And I'm sure we could add a few more on there, but it's really about, from start to finish along the continuum. And we also have other services that we offer, like, Co+Hoots has co-working space. Obviously, we have LaunchPoint that offers co-working space. And then we do programming along with that for, how to write a business plan or thinking about starting a business. How do you do that? Here are the steps. And we also publish different websites on, it'll help you walk through how to start a business, but it is difficult. And the time that it takes to really spend with these people who have these great ideas is critical. And so if you can find those gems in there and really nurture them and foster the growth, it does pay off. It's just hard to sometimes find the time to do that with the limited resources that we have.
I'll also add that language is really important here. Like you said, entrepreneur isn't always something that's digestible to small business owners. They don't call themselves that, or they call themselves owners. Or a lot of them, like you said, don't consider themselves actually businesses. It's a side hustle that's growing into something, and there's a lack of confidence there. I think the key here is to lean into the ecosystem that you're building, the more networks of organizations that understand the resources that exist. And I don't think there's ever a lack of resources out there. I think almost any city, and now we have digital world, right? Like there are online business building programs and business plan tools that exist. I can send 5 that I know of that are all free, and you just walk through step by step how you want to build a business plan. Those exist, it's just they don't know about them. So the more, and usually when they're building a business, they talk to other people that they know. And the problem is they don't know other entrepreneurs. So they just need one connect to that center of power where there's entrepreneurs, and then they'll have that referral. But it requires all of the partners in your community knowing what resources exist. So I think the more effort we put into building the partnerships in a community that showcase the assets that exist in a community, the faster we'll reach those that are hard to reach.
So we're getting close to time here. So I want to kind of circle us up on one last question that I'd love each of you just to quickly speak to. And that is just, what do you think asset-based thinking and collaboration can do for us in these times of change, of sometimes even kind of radical change? And what has that meant for you, in your work?
I really appreciated this time. So I want to just kind of close out my last comment with a thank you again to the Kaufman team and you, Lauren, for facilitating this opportunity. But I think what we have learned about the power of asset-based thinking is that it really provides a good solid ground for organizations and people systems to become more adaptive. If you do not have the vantage point of looking at what you already have, and you're starting from a deficient type of perspective and being very myopic, you're not as agile as you might need to be at the time you need to be agile. So I would say adaptivity and agility is something that we've come away with. And then one other thing I do want to add, I know you didn't ask this, but Jenny's last comment made me think of this because someone asked this in a question: what is one of the biggest lessons you learned? And I would just highlight exactly what Jenny said, is that language is highly important. Language itself is an asset, and how you term certain things, nomenclature is really important, right? One of the things that we learned, which was very insightful to us, is that not everybody understands what technical assistance is. And I'm talking at the business level, right? An entrepreneur is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just need help with this particular tax file. I have no idea what you're talking about, funders or stakeholders. And so, we learned that language is important, and that at the end of the day, these are people who are building wealth for themselves and just want the brass tacks help. So we need to be adaptive to that as well. So thank you.
And then just sort of would briefly like to hear from Jaye, Jenny, and Katie as well.
I would echo what Shandra is saying. Those are great points. And just the fact that you might feel alone, but you're not alone. And there are other partners that are out there willing to help. You just have to, make the first phone call and see how you can work together. There are so many other partners willing to help and share in the overall cause.
I'll just build on that by saying I'm a recovering consultant at heart. So I just think of the essence of strategy is choice. And I think that we really figuring out where you want to focus, and also where your organization fits in with the broader group. I think so many times we try to do so much on our own as organizations and try to serve all needs, and really, it's very difficult to build all the capabilities you need to do in order to do that well. And so really thinking about what are the focus areas for your organization and for your collaboration? What are your overall objectives? And I think just also underscoring all the other comments that have already been made. Really appreciate those.
Yeah, I love everything everyone has said. I'm not sure I could beat and compete with any of those, but I think as you think about building these, I think we're in a fluid time right now, and moving forward, it's important to pay attention to month over month versus 6 months of reporting, right? And if you can pay attention on a day by day or a week by week or a month by month basis with your community of small businesses and partner organizations, you'll be able to pivot and make adjustments that are truly personalized to your community. I know that has been one of the key pieces we've taken away is this feedback, this open-ended feedback that we get every month, which means, oh, we should start doing this, right? It's a season now, seasonality of things. Businesses need this kind of support. So I think that applies to partner building as well. And I think as we talk about this, the recommendations we give small businesses around how we build good businesses, I almost think our organizations also need that as well. We need to think about how do we truly, like Katie said, harness what we're best at, prioritize only that, know that there's abundance in our community and others can fill the gaps, but coordinate that effort so that there really isn't a ton of overlap. There needs to be a little bit, right? But being able to communicate and build collaboration. I've never met a partner that doesn't want to genuinely partner. And so I think going in with that mindset when you talk about partnerships is important.
Thank you to the four of you for joining us for this session.